As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neal.
Wait, they talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind-A-SmackDown. 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 Rewind-A-SmackDown.
And welcome everybody listening to us on our free feeds, either at youtube.com or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. Welcome to the Friday edition of Rewind-A-SmackDown on the free side of things. We just spent a great deal of time, Neal and I, talking about today's news, including the latest on Raja Jackson and what may be a bit of a conclusion on that particular story. Janel Grant posting some interesting reactions to learning about specific details about the WWE's internal investigations. We've talked about some, adding to the list of unsavory topics, the story of AJ Ferrari, former member of the WWE's NIL program, who has now been accused of attacking a pregnant woman days after going on a high-speed police chase. So a little bit of details on that. Some discussion about produce and what their promoter, Orange Crush, has alleged of WWE ID's program. Now that, several of his wrestlers on his upcoming card have been pulled from the service, and also some discussion about whether or not myaw.com may have been some influence on that. And lastly, a discussion about Sami Zayn and some of the media he's conducted days after winning that WWE Championship, and maybe just a bit of a further discussion about just perhaps what winning a championship, a fictitious one, what that actually means for somebody's real, perhaps career. So all of that in the XL edition. I do also want to point out to people that John and I have released our latest edition of Rewind Away, talking about Heels, the TV show from Stars, which I don't know if you get, Neal. Do you get Stars over in England?
We don't get Stars. Heels was on some channel over here, but I never managed to catch it. I don't know, it just didn't catch my imagination for some reason.
Yeah, that is not, I would say, uncommon. Over at Post Wrestling, of course, we do a lot of reviews of just supplementary wrestling programming, including shows like Glow, certainly Unreal. Heels, I would say, it just kind of existed beneath that threshold where we felt there was enough interest to justify it. So this was kind of our first look at Heels, at least the first 3 episodes, and we thank Jake from the Windy City for giving us that excuse. I actually really enjoyed these first 3 episodes, so we give some of our thoughts on just everything that you see within it. This very, I would say, interesting, dramatic portrayal of wrestling political lore put into a TV series. So if you're a fan of Heels or want to learn a little bit more about it, do check out that show. Also,
or way if I may, even if you're not a fan of Heels, I have never seen it. I still haven't seen it, but I've thoroughly enjoyed Rewind Away, particularly because he was a guest star in the 3rd episode. CM Punk's Phil Brooks's involvement in this show, and your what ifs about whether he would be recreating events.
So just spoiler alert, in this first episode, the climax of the pilot ends with some version of a screw job where the booker is wrestling his brother, who is being threatened, or at least who is about to be signed by a company from quote unquote up north. And so the brother, out of his own self-interest or protection of his brother, feeling he's not ready enough for it, decides to screw him and essentially put a shoot hold on him to end the match early. Anyway, it's fascinating. And yeah, the idea of Heels, if it possibly would have continued well into its existence, if they would adopt real stories CM Punk and Brawl Out into its own story, it would be a really fascinating idea, but maybe we have to wait a bit longer for that, Neal. Also out in the Post Wrestling Café feed, our latest edition of not just MCU Later. This might be a first, a combination DCU/MCU Later, as Rich Fan and WH Park don't just talk about X-Men 97 Season 2 debut, including its first 3 episodes. They also found the time to watch and discuss Supergirl. And spoiler alert, they will not be recommending Supergirl. Or I should have said one of the. They will not be recommending one of these two, and
Which one?
it's
Mate?
Supergirl. Yeah. So that is out right now in the Post Wrestling Cafe. Also, a note: Collision, of course, took place last night, so it will not be this Saturday. In fact, Kate from Montreal and Ray Williams did the review last night, so you can find all of that in your Post Wrestling Cafe feed. Hope you guys join us for that entire ride. Neal,
Happy
How was it?
Neal and happy Way, because
how was it watching tonight's edition of WWE SmackDown?
it was awesome way, because particularly for you and I'm going to say, because we are in territories where SmackDown is on Netflix. This show was recorded after Raw on Monday, and therefore at 8 p.m. Eastern, boom, a 1 hour and 23-minute file is ready to watch on Netflix, and I was delighted.
I don't know if I've like tuned into either a Raw or a SmackDown and saw 123 as the total runtime of the show ever. You know?
No, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Like, I mean, keep in mind, most of the time, the way I watch these shows, they end up being like 2 hours anyway, just because like I zip through so much. But it's nice to be presented exactly with how much content there is. And even then, it's like walkouts, video packages that you can kind of zip through. You could probably get through this in an hour.
Recaps from Raw.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
So, we've earned this, Neal. Okay, like I feel like Sami Zayn. I deserve this.
This
all
is
right?
right. Yes,
We've
I
sat
agree.
through 6 months now of 3 hours in broadcast time. SmackDown. We deserve an hour and 23-minute show. So
I kind
big
of
smile on
remember
our
this now.
faces.
I was only part-time on Rewind-A-SmackDown last year, but how shaving 1/3 off this 3 hour show feels like way more than that. It just feels like a much tighter presentation. So I'm just very happy.
Okay, well,
I
let
will
me
be
ask
until-
you, like off the top, while we're having this conversation, did you feel like, what do you think was lacking on the show? Like, what are the sort of like casualties of going down to 2 hours versus having 3 hours for the show?
I think that's yet to be seen, because this was somewhat of a outlier in that it was a recorded show. And I feel they didn't want to keep that crowd that was feeling somewhat fatigued by the time we got to the main event of tonight's episode too long. So there was some filler here. Even in this 2 hour episode, I think there was more filler than we would normally have got, particularly with segments from Raw being replayed. I think we'll probably, when it goes live, get a tighter presentation with less in the way of full entrances and so on. So I think the full pattern of a 2 hour SmackDown is yet to be seen, but people will from the SmackDown roster will not be featured that were. And
That said, though, I mean, just kind of like scrubbing through tonight's edition in my mind, I feel like we got representation from almost all the important elements on the show. Like you got a bit of Blake Monroe, you got a Rey Fenix Vikingo match,
Yep.
which may not have gotten as much time as it would have on like a 3 hour edition of the show, but nonetheless, like seemed to do enough to elicit a strong reaction from the crowd. You had something involving R-Truth in the tag team division. You had your Danhausen thing. Are the matches? Do the matches feel shorter? Did they feel?
I
Shorter
thought
to
they
you?
felt shorter, yes. And some of that might be because the commercial breaks were all removed. And sometimes I catch up to the point on SmackDown when it's live on Netflix where we're getting the full match.
Yeah.
And we get the break stuff. So that felt, a very hard break. It's sort of, you're suddenly immediately right back with a break in the match. But you're right, that the main storyline beats of Finn, and we'll get to all of this, of course, as we describe the show, Finn and Tama, that they are the main beats of what they want to do, at least on the television product, are there.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the Warriors got some airtime, as we will discuss here. So this was, again, from the double tapings on Monday, 12,173 tickets distributed, according to WrestleTix. No idea how many people stuck around for this, but at least it sounded like pretty full to start here. And that was for Sami Zayn's, I want to say celebration speech. He returns as the WWE champion, and this being America, comes out, I would say, certainly, being overly cocky even on entrance. He's kind of like high-fiving fans, but he's almost like it's one of those "I told you so" types of like high fives where like there's some level of insincerity there, and immediately he receives some boos here. Sami says, "A lot of you came to ride or die with the last real good guy," and that receives a mixture of cheers and boos. He thanks his supporters from the bottom of his heart, but says, it's kind of funny because I've come out here and I've been booed every single time over the past few months. And those are the same people who are the ones who wanted me to be champion 3 years ago. They turned their backs on me and they jumped off the bandwagon. And I could be petty and I could tell all those people to kiss my ass. And then he smugly says, but I won't, because I am a good guy. So there's just something lovely about somebody who says they're not going to do something, but they're essentially doing it anyway before saying, no, but I'm not going to do it. Sami says he never changed. He did it his way. He did it the right way. He says, we are celebrating tonight and we are celebrating me. I will now forever be known as one of the greatest of all time. Sami Zayn, WrestleMania main eventer, Grand Slam champion, WWE champion. And he says no amount of booing will ever take that away from me. So what did you think about this opening promo?
I thought it was awesome. Sami's so great. We talked about this in the XL portion before the show, talking with Sami's media run this week, but he's great. And I like you said, the line, and he used it again, when he said, I could be petty and tell the people that I'm not championship material to kiss my ass. And he sort of says it with a lot of snark. But I won't, his hands up in the air. But I won't do that, And I just thought he did that brilliantly.
It's the equivalent of like like offending somebody and then saying no offense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought like this was a really fascinating promo in that like you saw the end scene from a Night of Champions where he was just like, I mean, there wasn't a more fan friendly face in the whole building. But here you have Sami Zayn now. Like, I'll also say it's fascinating because through many of the interviews in media and many of the online reactions, you can't help but be happy for this guy, in real life, right? This man who has worked, we've seen for decades. Well, maybe, I don't exactly know how long his career is, but it feels like it's been like a 20-year career so far. And finally achieving what many would consider to be the pinnacle of the sport. There's a very genuine happiness that I think like longtime fans, even like short-time fans might feel for him. And yet he has to come out and elicit the opposite reaction. So I was fascinated to see how he would do it. And I do think like this same material that he spoke in this promo, it said in a different way would have made for like a great babyface celebration speech, but he presents it here in a way that drives up the obnoxiousness, drives up the pettiness and bitterness towards all the people who doubted him, and does it to such an effective degree that it makes you kind of want to boo him, and forget about everything, all the happiness you might have felt for him initially.
Yeah, he did a great job of in less than a week pivoting from being mobbed by the adoring crowd in Saudi to eliciting, some of you guys are assholes, but I could say that, but I'm not going to say that. I think it was just that tightrope was walked really, really effectively here.
I think wrestling like really does teach you like, I don't know, how to behave and how to not do certain things if you don't want to come across like an asshole. Like after you accomplish something, what you should do is thank people. What you should not do is focus on everybody who said you couldn't do it and I guess maybe offending them. I mean, listen, there's a babyface way that I think you could do that too, but somehow it just worked here. Worked here as a very good heel promo. So he did a tremendous job here. And this is when Cody Rhodes shows up here. And I don't know about you, Neal. Like, I certainly heard a mixture of like cheers and boos for him. Did you feel the same?
Absolutely. I felt it was a mixed reaction for Cody.
Now, do you think that's directly off of losing the championship, or would he have received this anyway to this crowd? What do you think?
I think he might have received it anyway, because most of the crowd were still with Sami because it wasn't a completely heel promo. Like we said, he was threading the needle here in a sense, And And he's getting interrupted essentially, by the former champion, with all the usual stuff and the pyro, even though he doesn't have the championship anymore. And I think to some, that's kind of like, yeah, heelish slightly
Sure.
before he says a word,
Well, like, I mean, just who he is, the guy in the suit, the dyed blonde hair versus the guy who, I mean, just kind of dresses like an everyman, right? Again, it's dependent on the town. Most towns you will see them love Cody Rhodes, certainly above Sami Zayn. But yeah, it was certainly a mixed reaction here, and I wonder how much of it is due to him failing at, retaining the championship versus just a natural reaction he would have had anyway. So Cody says. Well, Sami says, Cody, what do you want to talk about? Cody says he wanted to be the first to celebrate with Sami after his title win, just like Sami did with him back at WrestleMania 40. And he offers his congrats, shakes his hand, turns around, and just leaves. This is when Sami tells him to stop playing games and drop the act. I know you're addicted to this title, so just tell me to my face why you're here. But they are interrupted by Jey Uso coming in from Raw. Jey comes in, gives Sami a big hug. They do their secret handshake. Jey says, you earned and deserve that championship, but I'm here to give you a warning shot. I need that title for my family. Cody asks, what year is this? And when did main event Jey Uso revert to running errands for the tribal chief? Sami tells Jey that as far as he's concerned, this title is still in the family. And, we are, it has been brought up that Sami Zayn is a champion at the very same time as Roman Reigns on the other show. And that interaction, I think is inevitable, with or without the championship. But now being able to see the both of them on the same plane, is there any sort of interest in you seeing something with Sami and Roman in the near future?
Yes, and I think given what gets announced by the end of this segment, we'll see it as soon as Monday. Some interaction, at least, between them.
So this is when Adam Pearce interrupts, and he's of course acting on behalf of Nick Aldis, who has temporarily been suspended after the Gunther altercation. So Adam Pearce says Sami needs to find a challenger, and it's not going to be for SummerSlam. It's going to be for Chicago on Monday, which, I mean, I guess is like in story, it makes sense because, Pierce might want to favor his own show. But certainly in reality, them making this somewhat of a cross-branded show, which he would kind of like hint towards later, of course, opens the door for a CM Punk to show up. So Pierce makes Jey versus Cody tonight as a number one contenders match. And that is it. That is our opening segment here. Any other thoughts on all this?
Well, yeah, on Pierce, it feels like an asshole move from Pierce, who's generally speaking not a heel GM. We haven't really had heel GMs for a long time, and thankfully so. But
he's
here
an
he
asshole
is.
to the baby faces. Oh, sorry, he's an asshole to the heels.
I
which Sami
guess,
is.
but here he is making Sami, who's only just won the title, defend it within a week or so, within 2 weeks, something that he just would not do with Roman or with Liv on his own show. Liv's a heel, she doesn't really have to, So I felt that in stepping in for all this and saying, first order of business, we need to find a challenger. And by the way, we'll find that challenger tonight. And by the way, you'll have to face them in storyline, at least. This is Friday, in a couple of days' time.
You're right. Like, I mean, okay. So on the one hand, he appears fair in that, like, if a heel does something to deserve like mistreatment from the GM, he will give that like in the form of punishment. But Zayn didn't really do anything wrong at all to maybe warrant something like this. And we also are seeing repeatedly just the amount of like leeway he would give Roman, the amount of like almost like sort of like fear like he affords Roman that he clearly does not afford Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
So that I guess true to the character. So that is it here. And then we have our main event, of course, tonight. So in the back, we've got Kathy with Charlotte. Charlotte says Jade got what she deserved at Night of Champions, and this is when Alexa Bliss shows up. Alexa says she wishes Charlotte told her that she would be there at Night of Champions. Charlotte says, Well, I didn't think you would be teaming with Tiffany last week. That came as a surprise to me. So Tiffany comes in, tells Charlotte that she didn't need her help last week, but thanks. Chelsea also arrives, and they do some sort of awkward, funny goodbye as we head towards our first match of the evening. Charlotte teaming up with Tiffany Stratton and Chelsea, taking on Michin, B-Fab, and Jade. So the crowd already starts chanting, "We want Chelsea to start." Jade lays Charlotte out on the floor as we get the heat on Charlotte through commercial break. The crowd continues to chant for Chelsea. Jade does a mocking Fargo strut. Chelsea eventually takes the hot tag here, and her run ends with, I would say, a bit of an awkward looking sort of like low flatliner type of thing. Then the Rough Rider here. Everybody comes in. Chelsea delivers a step up Hurricane Rana where she ends up essentially power bombing herself in the process. Unprettier is countered by Jaded. Chelsea recounters with the roll up for 2. The baddies distract, allowing Jade to hit Jaded again on Chelsea, giving Jade the win over Chelsea Green. So, I will say, Neal, like, I don't think Chelsea is very good in ring at all, at least not to the level that I think somebody needs to be in by a modern standard on WWE TV. But if you are rolling her kind of bad wrestling into her character as somebody who is not really good at this, but somehow flukes her way into victory, I kind of feel like it can work. Like, her trying to execute like a really fancy looking Hurricanrana, but ending up like power bombing herself in the process. I think it kind of works for the character, don't you think? Like somebody who, I don't know, like isn't supposed to do things perfectly,
Yeah, I can see that. And I think the thing that works in her favor is that as a character, the crowd really, really enjoy her. They're chanting, "We want Chelsea." In the backstage segments, they cheer. You can hear the crowd cheer when she enters the scene. So she's got all of that working for her. She's not the best worker. Neither is Jade, but she has an awful lot to compensate for that.
But Jade is supposed to look like a good wrestler.
Yes.
To believe the fiction of Jade Cargill, you have to believe that she is technically, or at least just powerful, or somewhat proficient enough to be able to like beat her opponents, right? You don't necessarily need that with Chelsea Green.
I think that's right. And if you've got Chelsea teaming with somebody, I think that's what's key to this. She needs backup and she can fluke her way through certain things. And if, she's always been somewhat, even when she switched between heel and face, as a heel, she will certainly beg off and kind of be scared a lot more. But here, she's somewhat clumsy and all to say, Way, that I agree with you, and I hadn't really thought of it in those terms before, but I think this can be made to work, particularly for someone who's so popular.
Yeah, she could be like an Orange Cassidy, but without like the really like fast, like good wrestling parts of the match. Anyway, so like you said, Neal, like she was by far the most like favored person in the entire match. The feud and the build is between Jade and Charlotte, but the crowd's attention is entirely on Chelsea, and that means more than anything, right? So what sort of role do you think she'll play heading to SummerSlam?
I think it'll be interesting. I think she'll be linked in some way to Charlotte and Bliss, and we've got that weird tease of some tension between Bliss and Charlotte before the match. We'll see where that goes. Maybe those two break up. So there's a lot of permutations, but I think they certainly have her in mind. That's pretty clear from this week and last, that Chelsea's going to be featured on this show. So it's hard to know exactly where she fits. With Tiffany, for sure, the two of them now seem to be tight. Tiffany no longer seems to be sort of begrudgingly with her. They seem to be friends. So
yeah.
That seems to be a tie-in.
So I do think we're about to get a title change, and I do think the titles will probably go on Fatal Influence. And therefore I wonder if that opens the door for Chelsea and Stratton to be one of the people vying for a title match. I also feel like, with Unreal coming out, Chelsea Green sort of being like an unofficial main character of the show, the only person who's been featured so consistently throughout the 3 seasons. I wonder if they're trying to time all of this, with the series as well. So in the back, we got Adam Pearce, who is arguing with Nick Aldis on the phone, so they're really kind of ramping up like the rivalry between the two GMs here. Sami Zayn then interrupts and asks Adam Pearce, "What's going on? I don't belong on Raw. Why are you making me defend the championship so soon?" Pearce says, "I'm giving you an opportunity to perform on a new platform," and says, if it'll make you feel better, let's make it a Raw and SmackDown Super Show. So he kind of gave the old like, we can't pay you, but we can compensate you in experience, type of excuse here.
Again, I feel like this is Pearce being an asshole.
Yeah.
And him arguing with Aldis, so you've got his, well, he says Nick, it could have been Nick Khan, but we assume it was Nick Aldis. And Khan, sorry, I'm not obsessed, but they thought that Nick Khan was on the phone. Aldis clearly not happy with this booking either, so I think that's interesting. I don't think we're headed for a full-on heel GM turn here with Pearce. But again, in this segment, I think he comes across as a bit of a dick.
Yeah, agreed. Now, maybe not full heel GM, but definitely some sort of like rivalry or like ramped up feud with Nick Aldis. It seems to be what they're teasing. Do you think Nick Aldis will be wrestling Gunther? Like, what do you make of all that?
They have not, and you and John have talked about this, they have not established Aldis as an in-ring threat of any sort. They allude to the fact that he's been in the ring before. Even in the altercation, Gunther is like, "You're a failed wrestler." There's a lot. They tried their best to make this feel completely real by bleeping out a lot of F words and all the rest of it.
I'm surprised they didn't go to their faces.
Yeah,
on Netflix.
Put a dot over their entire head, when they say "fuck." But we could be headed in that direction. I just feel like Gunther's been built up so hard in the past year as the legend killer, the career ender, that we have a GM who hasn't wrestled since he arrived at SmackDown. Being a legitimate competitor with him just doesn't really seem right. I think that would need a little more build up.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting idea. And I guess you also have to ask, like, who else would you pair with Gunther?
It's a good question.
That might be as intriguing as a Nick Aldis, assuming everybody else is taken up, right? Assuming
for SummerSlam,
assuming Punk and Cody may be taken up. You've also done those matches before.
Yeah, Gunther. And you've got on a 2-day event, you've got to have Gunther on that card.
Yeah, certainly. All right, so then we've got. This is when Sami Zayn sees Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae, and Zayn is so happy to see Johnny Gargano. He says he couldn't have done it without him. Johnny has been his rock, he says, and he asked Candice LeRae to take a photo with the two of them together. So, all right. Analysis, thoughts?
I got nothing.
Give me 500 words on this. All right, Triple A Cruiserweight Championship. Rey Fenix versus Hijo del Vikingo. Now, I don't know when they... Well, I guess this was a double taping, so I guess people got wind of this, but it wasn't promoted on Raw, was it?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah. And, like, this is a pretty terrific match, to just kind of throw it there cold, that I feel like would have at least inspired some buzz, but this is also, like... not the type of match that I mean WWE would really kind of like use to make a big splash at all. Here though, it did offer a tremendous showcase for both Rey Fenix and Vikingo here. So this is Vikingo's WWE main roster debut, isn't it?
I think so.
Like at least in a proper match. You might have like done a battle royal or something, but
I think we've seen him on main roster programming, but I think in sort of AAA adjacent stuff where he's just in the crowd or backstage, I don't recall, and I'm going to be made a fool of, possibly, but I don't recall any in-ring.
Yeah. So he comes out playing like the AAA, or at least like a leading cocky heel here, and Vikingo traps Phoenix on the apron, delivers this like big acai moonsault as we go to commercial break. The crowd is chanting Lucha Libre. Vikingo does this just awesome imploding 450 into a Rana out of the corner. Then he follows up with the twisting poison Rana off the top rope to Rey Fenix. The crowd is chanting, "This is awesome for this." Phoenix avoids a springboard 450 and then just kind of quickly puts Vikingo up for the Muscle Buster to win. Now, having maybe still remembered like the vibe of like Vikingo's debut on Dynamite, there was some sort of like similar feeling here where like you got the sense people watching him for the first time, not really knowing what to expect,
Yeah.
were just like just completely rocked. Seeing like these moves that they would have never seen before. This was certainly not as complete of a match between the bell, especially since we didn't see, at least I didn't see anything between the commercial breaks. But I thought it was still an outstanding showcase for Vikingo.
This was the one part of the show where I kind of would have liked to have seen the commercial breaks, but we didn't have that option on. I guess nobody gets that option with this taped show, because this was a stellar match, and easily the best in ring thing on the show. And like you said, Way, I think people who weren't familiar, particularly with El Hijo del Vikingo, were won over. In the crowd I'm talking about, were won over about halfway through this match. They were pretty, yeah, I think, impressed by what they were seeing. Clearly, though, at some point, which I was looking for but could not identify, Vikingo must have tweaked himself, because this was on Monday that this happened. He
Right.
was supposed to and was billed to perform on NXT on Tuesday and didn't. So something must have happened here, but it was very hard to identify. I didn't see anything awkward, but could have happened during the breaks.
Yeah. Now he could have been injured after the match, like through some preparation, as I'm seeing maybe reported. So that could be one of the reasons why as well. But in the match, like he seemed to be perfectly fine, and he looked great. And like I do think like out of many from AAA, like Vikingo probably would have been one of the ones to actually get a main roster call up at some point. But I do think like this would accelerate those discussions.
Yeah.
It could have just been like, hey, like we want this Rey Fenix showcase to feature like somebody incredible. We kind of exhausted like our roster of guys, so like, can we bring somebody from AAA? All right, who better to bring than this guy? So I don't know if like they would have always planned for his call up sooner than later, but I will certainly say like seeing this on this stage in front of like certainly executives that may not typically watch AAA as closely, I think that probably does a lot to accelerate those discussions. All right, in the back we got Kathy Kelly with Julia here. Julia says she doesn't back down from any fight, and if Blake Monroe stops being a coward, then she will fight her anytime, anywhere. This is when Kiana James shows up and tells Julia that she got lucky last week. Blake Monroe then attacks her from behind, saying, "It's so good to see you again." James comes in to do a bit more trash talking towards Julia, but now Blake even attacks her, saying it's nice to see you too. So Blake Monroe is just on a bit of a rampage, attacking everybody, but continuing to add fuel to the Julia program that seems to be coming up.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Julia and well, three-way program. It seems like Kiana James is still very much attached to this. Like, what do you think? It's not really the clean break that I was expecting from Julia and James.
Same here. I thought that was going to be Kiana in the rearview mirror, but then I suppose what happens? Does she just sit in catering for weeks? I think they want to keep her on the show in some form or fashion. I really don't want this to become a three-way. I think it should move on to Julia and Monroe for this, for Blake Monroe's first proper program on SmackDown. One of the I think probably the good things about the 2-hour SmackDown is that these backstage storyline advancements are really pretty brief, and they need, that's all you need. 90 seconds or something of this is absolutely fine.
That's right. Yeah. I agree. In the back, we go to Jimmy, Jacob, and Royce Keys. Royce makes a comment about Jacob not calling him now that he's with Roman. Jimmy asks Royce if he's seen Solo so they can handle their family business. Royce says, family? Blood does not make you family. Sounds like a Vin Diesel speech. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. And he tells Jacob he's been his day one for the last 14 years. He tells Jacob, I'm your family. Big Jim says, not no more, as Jacob leaves with Big Jim. So, what do you think about Royce Keys here?
Well, first of all, I'm thinking about you channeling John with the impressions tonight.
I can only do Vin Diesel. That's it.
yeah, more please. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed this. It went absolutely nowhere. They're looking for Solo, and they don't find him. Spoiler alert for the rest of the show. So, but that's
They
kind of
really
interesting.
wasted their time.
There was really not much.
I mean, it was
else.
the same building. Yeah, I guess he left early, maybe.
Yeah, I guess the storyline progression here is Jacob's. He's staring into space and perhaps thinking,
Mm-hmm.
about the Vin Diesel of it all.
Yeah.
Is
sure.
Royce my family?
Well, within the bloodline, certainly. Like, I mean, they are maybe a bit tough to pin down in that, like, Roman is such a big baby face. Jacob is still very much a baby face, but the Usos kind of verge, between being slightly booable heels, right? As like certainly in these moments, Big Jimmy Uso feels like the heel here, whereas Royce Keys is trying to pull Jacob out of the dark side and back into, his family.
Yeah.
So they're telling that story with Jacob Fatu. The battle for Jacob Fatu's soul continues here. But do you think it'll lead to Royce joining Solo and Knight's new team?
I came away from this kind of confused about where all of this goes because we talked about this last week. A rival faction to the bloodline is really hard to do, and because they're so all powerful, particularly when you factor Roman into it, you can absolutely mix it up with some of the lower characters in it, but yeah, it's just hard to convince me that you get something that looks competitive from the SmackDown guys here. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Like a full-on faction war is not going to work unless you had like a superstar equal to, or at least on a similar level to Roman to oppose him, right?
Yeah.
That's not to say you can't tell a story just with like even like Solo LA and Royce Keys, trying to cause some friction within the bloodline. So out come Trick Williams and Little Yachty here. They're quickly interrupted by Carmelo Hayes. And Carmelo Hayes wants to run it back for the U.S. Championship now that Ricky Saints couldn't get it done. He says he made that U.S. Championship a championship, whereas Trick made it an accessory. He says, if you want to run around with the championship, I can get you a discount at WWE Shop. He says this is the workhorse championship. It's for guys who are hungry. And Trick, you've been walking around like you have had too much to eat. So he's saying that he's not buying his big talk. You might be able to walk the walk and talk the talk when you're in here with them, but you've got 2 left feet and a mouthful of marbles when you're in there with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say it as cool as Carmelo Hayes did?
Much more cool way.
Yeah, thank you. Yachty says, you got a match, Carmelo, but it's going to take place next week, and it will not be for the championship. He says the champ needs to get his reps in. Trick says, you're right. I do know you like the back of my hand, Carmelo, as he delivers a trick slap to Carmelo Hayes here. So this backhand, which is becoming a bit of a signature of Trick Williams here. So Trick and Yachty are celebrating on the outside, and Mello dives onto them both, ending the segment in, what I feel is a very, very difficult feud for Carmelo Hayes.
I'm afraid so. But I will say that I think Mello did really, really well in this segment. Now, part of that is because Trick was clearly it was clearly scripted so that Trick was not speaking, for most of it. Mello comes out, he gets a good reaction from the crowd. They're chanting his name. He is charismatic. He cut a very good promo on Trick, but then talking for Trick is Yachty in a kind of annoying way. And I came away from this feeling, okay, this is it. This is definitely the direction they're going in, and I'm quite looking forward to it. And Trick Williams and Yachty very, very much positioned as the heels in all of this. Yeah. A very babyface promo from Mello and a very heelish reaction from Trick Williams and Yachty. But this only ends in one way. But, at the same direction, I'm still kind of looking forward to this feud. It's been long in the coming. And one thing that I was almost expecting, I'm very glad we didn't get, was Ricky Saints' music and him coming out at some point during this. So at least he's not involved in this. In fact, the guy seemed to be absolutely buried at Night of Champions.
Oh man, yeah. I don't really know how you follow up with Ricky Saints after like that match. So I hope they got something good. But I think this is a really tough feud for Carmelo because he has to play babyface against somebody the crowd just simply loves in Trick Williams. I mean, like, I suppose there's no real way to like do this feud unless you turn if they don't want to turn Carmelo Hayes heel, it's really hard to do this feud successfully because the crowd just loves Trick. They want to cheer Trick at this point. And to frame him through Yachty as a heel against Carmelo, it just I think leads to silence as you kind of got here. The big heroic moment of Carmelo delivering that dive to Trick, as a sort of receipt for the backhand. It received no reaction. And, while Carmelo cut a great promo, he is not the sort of like superstar at this point that Trick Williams is. He doesn't have the entrance. He doesn't have like the look. He doesn't have the charisma. He has some charisma. He has a lot of it actually, but not like Trick's. And to get this crowd to boo Trick is a real tough uphill battle for him.
I don't think it helps either when, Yachty is making all these references to Carmelo's size, nothing short of pure greatness. And he's kind of doing this sign, and then he calls him a little man or something like that. I think he's called him a short king. A couple of, I mean, we can see it for ourselves, but drawing attention to it all the time, when, as you say, people are not going to buy into the heel face dynamic in this feud. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but I'm still here for this program.
I just don't know how they're going to do it to like make it feel successful, because I think we're well past. We went through the Sami Zayn feud already. We're well past the point of like trying to get people to boo Trick, which is what I feel like this certainly Yachty's promo is sort of designed for. And I just like coming off of the Saints program, I suppose, if you want to call it that, it feels that much tougher because Saints is actually a heel, Pairing now, Trick should, I think, be paired with other heels. Or you turn Carmelo, which I think Carmelo might, be happy about. But to me, the element that still doesn't really work about all this is Yachty, who I think carries such like naturally heelish manager energy. Yeah. Like, there's probably a way to make him work in the way that like a Prince Nana worked for Swerve, even like when Swerve was a babyface. But like Yachty, whenever he talks, like he's just really, I would say, unlikable, and certainly like in essentially ducking Mello, or at least like not granting Mello a proper title shot here, suggests he's being scripted to garner heelish reaction.
Oh yeah, I felt this was very much a heel presentation for Trick and Yachty. The cheap shot, with the backhand and all of that, and it is kind of jarring because Trick is treated like a baby face. He's and he cut that promo about getting married and all the rest of it. That we saw. He's sort of being presented as one as well. So this was kind of a hard pivot this week. So yeah, I take your meaning where it's going to be very difficult to get a crowd to turn on him. In fact, that's not going to happen.
So we go to the back and we got the latest in Danhausen, and Danhausen he has Kit Wilson and Miz hooked up to the machine.
Yeah.
Cloning machine. And Matt Cardona shows up here. Danhausen reveals that he's got a match with JD McDonough at Saturday night's main event at MSG. And he also reveals that he's got backup from somebody from New York that he was just on the phone with. And I don't know, I'm guessing it's like Jalen Brunson or something. Like, who else would kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So he then instructs Matt Cardona to turn the dial up on the machine as Miz and Kit Wilson end up acting out like having seizures.
Yes.
Is that what you would describe?
They start to vibrate, and then they kick into full kind of seizure mode. And my takeaway at the end was that Kit yells awesome And I had to rewind. Who's shouting awesome here? Because Miz had his mouth closed. So my assumption here is that there's going to be some sort of
They're swapping
personality
brains?
swap thing
Freaky
going on.
Friday?
I think that's
On Friday.
the latest experiment here is
Oh my God. Well, they also said "woo woo woo," you know it. So I think they're just like they're not just saying their own catchphrases, but they're saying everybody's catchphrases now. Wildly inconsistent are the powers from this machine, you know.
particularly between Raw and SmackDown. Danhausen seems all powerful on this show.
Yeah.
Whereas things seem to go sometimes very badly wrong for him on Raw. Interesting.
So like we speculate every week about what exactly is going to happen to Miz and Kit Wilson. I'm now of the opinion that I don't think they know, and I think they're making it up as they go along every single week, because every single week it's something different, and it doesn't seem to be progressing to anything. Like this cloning machine reveal, like I'm guessing SummerSlam, you know, at this point, if it's, you know, it hasn't already happened, but they're not exactly like teasing us with like the reveal, nor are they teasing us with like what's actually becoming of like Kit Wilson and Miz. They're just kind of these accessories now.
Yeah. The cloning machine box is starting to give, and the body, which I don't think we saw here, starting to give gobbledygook or egg energy. We're going to get something better than that because.
Well, we said that about Danhausen's debut, and that was, I will still say terrible, but I mean, yes, terrible kind of works for him, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's like a perfect origin story.
I hope the guy himself is somewhat involved in this storyline because he is funny and creative and may have some idea for the payoff here.
What do you think of Miz, like somebody like the Miz, you know, making, I'm sure, a good amount of money at this point? Like, what do you think of like him coming here, probably like, you know, sitting in the back for 12 hours, and his job is to be hooked up to this machine and going that's how he earned his, like, you know, probably pretty healthy paycheck today. Good for him and Johnny Gargano, I guess, those two.
I guess, yeah. I don't know about Gargano, but I think Miz is loving this. I just think he loves everything.
All right, so then we got our next match here, Lainey Reid versus Brie Bella. All right, this is Brie's first singles match in over a decade, and I suppose when you think about well, when this match took place in the body of like the evening, this was probably going to be a pretty difficult spot for these two to wrestle what would have been like the fourth hour of this you know, whole thing. So Lainey Reid versus Brie Bella, Brie's first match in over a decade here. Brie focuses her attack on the arm and shoulder, and Reid delivers, I would say, some like pretty attention-grabbing left-hand punches. You know, that certainly caught the attention of the announcers. Brie rolls through into a yes lock, and unfortunately, no reaction for pretty much anything, including the yes lock here. Paige on the outside stops Henley and Jane from trying to help. Brie lets go of the hold to help Paige, and this allows Lainey Reid to hit her running knee, pinning Brie Bella. And, you know, unfortunately, a very ice-cold reaction for this one.
Yeah. Very brief, very basic, lots of tomfoolery at the end in order to get the win. And I think I just think it was a bad match.
Yeah.
And may well have even been edited a little bit because it was recorded.
Well, if they edited it, they certainly didn't add any noise to it, you know, which I think
that's
done a service to this particular match. I'll say I thought like Reid's offense looked good here, especially those punches, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. For me, like when I watch Brie, I just might have like, again, it might just be lowered expectations, but I think I just keep waiting for her to fall off the tightrope like every time she's wrestling a match, and she hasn't yet. Like I will say this is about as she's doing about as well as you would ever expect of a Brie Bella, right? And for me, maybe that's like I think that's impressive.
I think it's really fair. I think what she can do, she's doing competently enough, and you know, it's more than I could do.
Yes. Like I would not have been confident at all at the start of this run in a Brie Bella singles match, even on a tape show. And while the crowd did not respond to it at all, I don't know. I feel like she's already over overachieved maybe what my expectations were, at the start of all this. But this does set up a title match for Saturday night's main event here between Fatal Influence and Brie Bella and Paige. Do you think this will be the title change?
I think it will, and I think it's time. It's past time, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I don't know what you do with Brie after this, because I don't think keeping her and Paige together is particularly good creative direction. I think you would perhaps spin Paige off, give Brie maybe just some time off or something. That might be the way to do it. But these titles need to switch.
Yeah, we don't really know about the status of Nikki, but yeah, I would imagine maybe an end to the group itself. Once they drop the titles, and I'm kind of curious if like they would entertain more like singles matches with either of them. Certainly, Brie makes a bit more sense, attached to a tag team with Nikki, but there's some potential for Paige to like tell single stories if they wish to prolong. Well, they both have contracts, so of course they'll still be sticking around. So R-Truth is having a hot dog eating contest in the back with Nathan Frazier. This, of course, being 4th of July weekend. And Nathan's hot dogs. Nathan Frazier.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Okay, we don't have those, so.
Okay. We don't have them either, right? Well, I just know they're a thing. So anyway, R-Truth wins the hot dog eating contest, and Damian Priest just he's playing along. This is what he's doing now, and in walks the War Raiders. Ivar takes a hot dog from Damian Priest and bites it. R-Truth says, "You just bit his wiener," and so Ivar spits it out, and R-Truth says, "You're supposed to swallow, dog," or something to that extent.
Yes.
This is all in a way to build up to our winner take all tag team match between the War Raiders, who are the AAA champions, and the WWE tag team champions in Truth and Priest. Truth, in fact, suggests putting all the titles on the line in a hot dog eating contest, and Priest just kind of tells him to settle down. He says he doesn't know when, but they will get their match, and it'll have to be on SmackDown. He specifies it'll be on SmackDown, as if to say, not on that YouTube only, Mexican TV bullshit. Okay.
Which he's due to appear on, I think, anytime.
Damian Priest?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
they've been. Am I spoiling things? I think I may well be, but they've been
did you
teasing
read AAA spoilers? How dare you?
A former world champion is going to appear on AAA. They've been teasing for quite a bit, and I'm sorry to those who I've spoiled
I'm not
who it is
anymore. All right. So then this is interesting. After like Priest and Truth leave, they had Eric say to Ivar, "Why did you eat that hot dog, man?" And I found this interesting because, like, I guess like from what we've seen of the War Raiders and maybe like their presentation since I guess coming back to AAA, they pushed as just like, I don't know, your standard tough guy team, right?
Yeah.
This was them certainly doing a lot more comedy, like eating the hot dog, spitting out the hot dog, and even Eric at the end saying, "Why did you do that, man?" As if to say like, these are not tough guys. They're simply people that are trying to hold together the impression that they are tough guys together. Was that your read?
I don't know what my read was, but yeah, it was just terrible, terrible comedy. Why'd you eat the hot dog, man? And it ends with him putting his head in his hand. This was a very Otis kind of reaction. Oh no, what have I done? Kind of thing. Just abysmal comedy from all that we've been seeing for a long time with the Priest and R-Truth backstage.
I do have to say, I think at this point they've tried hard enough to push the War Raiders as a serious act that I think they're a lost cause. I think they were probably most successful as like a pseudo comedy turkey eating act, and I think that's their destiny at this point, from what seems to be hinted, towards the end of this.
Yeah, maybe.
Right. All right, so. And I believe this man has had his share of like food eating contests on WWE TV, so he would know a thing or two about this hot dog eating competition. All right, so Cody and Finn Balor are in the back next. hey, I know you from Japan. No, like they have other history, I guess. So Cody and Finn Balor are in the back, and Cody says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I forgot to welcome you to SmackDown. It's only been like 3 weeks." Balor says one of the reasons he came here was to face you, Cody, but he had hoped that it would be for the championship. So he tells Cody to get his championship back before his match with Jay. And then this is when Tama Tonga walks in. Tama says, "I thought about what you told me last week," which I had to rack my brain, but I think he said something about like, "Good to see you're following your own destiny now and not taking orders," or something.
Yeah.
So then Tama says, like, "I thought about what you said last week, and I asked the elders what I should be doing." And this is when Tama Tonga attacks him from behind. Tama says, "I'm closing the books on everything from my past, and you're next." So we are getting our Finn Balor versus Tama Tonga feud, and I'm there for it, Neil. Like it's it's a good first feud, I feel, for the both of them, and you certainly have a lot of history to dig into.
I think so too, yeah. We'll get all the allusions to "I know you from Japan," I'm sure, as this goes along. But yeah, this is a decent feud, enough feud for Finn in his first kind of program on SmackDown. I could see if Shinsuke turns up, I could see some tag teamery about all of this as well, involving Tala too. But we'll see how it all shakes out. I mean, it will eventually get to maybe as soon as Saturday night's main event, we'll get the singles match with Finn and Tama.
All right, so then we've got Cody versus Jay in our main event tonight for the WWE Championship opportunity on Monday in Chicago on Raw. So the match starts out. Jay delivers a suicide dive to Cody, and the announcers point out Jay favoring his ankle afterwards. As they fight to the announce table, Jay hobbles back to the ring. Cody delivers a dive, and they delivered double clotheslines in the ring to each other, taking us to a final commercial break. Uso Splash gets a 2 count. The Cody Cutter gets a 2 count. Jay Spear gets a 2 count. Jay misses another splash. Cody delivers his own spear, then delivers the Crossroads as Jay again kicks out at 2. Cody then goes up for his own, I want to say, attempt at a Uso Splash, but he's met with the knees of Jay, and then Jay ends up getting a 2 count out of that. Again, I'm guessing they didn't take this show out of sequence, unless I'm mistaken, because the heat for this one was not at all what you would expect for Jay versus Cody Rhodes. The crowd reaction was not at all too big even for these finishing these spots. Jay then goes for an O'Connor roll, and then seems to lose his balance as he's going for something else. By this point, like Cody, like they end up backing each other into a corner. Jay's still reaching for what looks to be maybe a Crossroads or something. They just kind of like bail on the spot, go back in the middle. Cody delivers the Crossroads one more time, and Cody gets the victory. So yeah, finish definitely looked to be messed up, and they I guess didn't attempt to do anything about it in the edit here, because this was not a good match.
This was a bad match, where I felt right from the lead up to the first commercial break, where Cody's supposed to take a slip off the apron for Jay to do the dive to go to commercial break, and even that was awkward. And like you said, when they're trying to trade each other's moves, the Cody version of the Uso Splash looked absolutely awful, and then the finish was bad as well, all compounded by the fact that the crowd were clearly fatigued by this many hours of sitting there and possibly just not really invested in what they were seeing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I thought this was actively bad.
Yeah. Considering the experience of the both of them, considering the history the two of them personally share, I expected a whole lot more out of this. And yes, you do maybe take into account a crowd that's been here for a while. But I think two main eventers like this, two veterans like this, should be expected to be able to get the crowd even after all of that, which honestly isn't even that much. At the accelerated pace, it's not like they're recording for 2 hours, right? At least I don't think so. So they should have done a lot better than this, right? And if they didn't, they should have at least did something in edit. But the performance themselves was just simply not good. So this was bad, considering the level here. So Cody Rhodes gets his a title opportunity on Monday. Do we get a title change on Monday, Neal?
I think it's perfectly possible, I think by the time we get to SummerSlam, and we already know from John's reporting that at least the plan was, I'm going to put it in the past tense, for Cody and Punk to face one another, and that to be one of the marquee matches at SummerSlam. I think Cody having the belt back elevates that program. So I could absolutely see Cody winning the belt back. Whether it happens on Monday, I'm kind of skeptical that they do it that quickly. But again, the clock is ticking. It's almost the 4th of July. With it's less than a month until SummerSlam. So if they're going to put the belt back on Cody, it'll have to be pretty soon. And that's somewhat of a Drew McIntyre situation all over again, where it just yo-yos off Cody and back again quite quickly. But that all said, I'm still pleased that Sami will have gotten a run. If it's longer, then great. If it's not, then he seems happy anyway. So, I think I would prefer Sami to have somewhat of a longer run and them having maybe a slightly longer storyline to do with that. And that Cody and Punk could be made to work without the belt. But my suspicion is it will be for the championship.
My feeling is that if they do take the belt off of Sami, I think that'll turn Sami into the biggest babyface. And it'll turn Cody into a terrible heel. And I don't think that's the type of feeling they want to entertain for Cody Rhodes. I think you could do Cody versus Punk without the championship and have it still feel big. I think the audience really wants to see this Zayn reign extended, and I think they're just simply playing with the threat of having it end on so quickly because people are expecting it to end so quickly, and pairing him against a guy who would be most likely to win the belt off of him, I think is just simply their way of toying with those expectations and making you that much more elated, perhaps, that Zayn is retaining. That's my hope, I want to say, and maybe even my feeling. So that probably is my prediction. I think Zayn retains. And I also think, I don't know how you get there, but Punk is going to be on the show. Cody's going to be on the show. That sort of represents a perfect opportunity to set the scene for that particular match on SummerSlam, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that is a Monday. Also, again, for Saturday night's main event, we've got Danhausen versus JD McDonough, Brie Bella, and Paige versus Fatal Influence thus far for the tag team titles. Your thoughts overall on tonight's WWE SmackDown?
I was pleased that we're in the 2-hour era, so we'll get that out of the way. We did have the feeling of a taped show, even with the adjustment to 2 hours. We did still, because of I think they didn't want to keep the crowd for hours on end on Monday. That did mean recaps from Raw. We got the Oba recap. We got the Seth and Roman recap. We got full entrances. I think that will be a little more tightly paced as we go forward. I think this felt very much of a build to a big Raw on Monday more than anything else, particularly with this tease that it's going to be kind of this Raw and SmackDown super show. And we still got some storyline progressions, Trick and Mellow, which again, has its faults, but it's, we're still building to Charlotte and Jade, Monroe and Julia, Danhausen, somewhat of the dead end with Brie and Paige, Fatal Influence, Finn and Tama.
I think
War Raiders were there, So I mean, there's certainly stuff happened.
Yeah, I think the show did an effective job of pushing the stories along, and I think in terms of star power, you had what felt like a pretty full cast here, minus I guess CM Punk, Gunther minus Gunther, okay, because he's SmackDown too, but in his place
Ricky Saints.
No Ricky Saints, although I don't know if
he's underground
clamoring for him. But you got Sami, you got Cody, you got Jey Uso, as maybe a bit of a surprise. I want to say they at least touched on I think every important storyline. And so I felt like this was a satisfying show in that sense. You had Vikingo versus Rey Fenix, but beyond that, it was pretty poor in terms of wrestling quality. And I will say that might be like the easiest like casualty to perhaps like, pinpoint in the transition to 2 hours. But it was, to me, a surprise at like how unimpressive and how even bad you might say Cody versus Jay was, because I would at the very least expect them to put on, I think, much more competent performance than I think what they ended up doing.
That's my biggest takeaway from this show, is how poor the main event was. And there was, like you said, the wrestling was kind of poor, and that was just the crowd being, I think, exhausted and not really interested didn't help at all.
All right, so that takes us to what is a relatively quiet weekend in professional wrestling, in that we don't even have Collision. We have AAA, but that's only an hour for people that are keeping up with that. No pay-per-views this weekend. We have, though, we don't even have the G1 yet. So man, everybody enjoy your soccer, enjoy the fresh air, enjoy grass. Touch grass. We will all be touching grass this weekend, and just enjoy your lives. But of course,
and you should savor it way, because you had a hell of a long weekend of podcasting last week with all those PLEs, pay-per-views, running Raw, Rewind-A-Raw on Monday. Jack did a great job, by the way, on Monday. So
he did a great job. Well, we will be making up for this weekend throughout the course of May, because as you all know, it is the start of G1 season. G1 Climax 36 coverage of every single tournament match will be taking place with our stellar team here at Post Wrestling. And of course, it is also the return of the Double Shot, where John Pollock and myself will be talking about Dark Side of the Ring Season 7, which actually starts next week. So our first review talking about the TNA episodes that are coming out will be out next week. We also are seeing the return of WWE Unreal, and we will somehow find the time to talk about both Dark Side of the Ring and Unreal, probably on the same episode whenever that starts. Then we've got Rewind-A coming up with our WrestleMania 21 review in a few weeks' time. Also, an Akira Hokuto retrospective. This plus our X-Men 97 Season 2 reviews, which are going to be weekly. A UFC 329 McGregor versus Holloway review that's coming out. And also Collision Course every single week, along with our XL editions of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown reviews, which Neal and I will be going to right about now.